Do you have a pet who has passed on? And if so, do you have questions? Like, are they coming back to me? How are they doing? Do they miss me? Are they mad at me? All of those kinds of questions that we all ask ourselves. Well, good news, in this video, I'm going to answer probably the second most common question that I get as an animal communicator, and that is, does my pet who has passed miss me? I'm Dr. Cara Gubbins, and I'm a professional animal communicator whose mission is to empower all of us to become animal communicators so we can connect more deeply with all of the animals in our lives. And this is another video in my series about animals in the afterlife. And in this video, I'm going to be talking about grief, the grieving process, and how animals feel about us after they pass. And I'm going to answer that burning question, does my pet who has passed miss me? Future videos in this series are going to include the Rainbow Bridge, signs from your pet who has passed, soul contracts, all kinds of stuff. If you have a question about animals in the afterlife, put it in the comments below and I will answer that question in a future video in this series. So let's jump right in. Does my pet who has missed me? The answer is going to surprise you, I think. No, they do not miss you. And that is good news, right? So often my clients come to me because they're grieving, they're suffering, they're in emotional distress after saying goodbye to a pet. And oftentimes the other pets in the family who are still here in the physical, they're also grieving. They also miss that their buddy who has passed on, their friend, their soulmate. And so my clients come to me with a lot of grief, a lot of pain, and a lot of suffering in their hearts. And because they're suffering, they think that their animal is suffering too. And I had a client in LA whose dog had passed, and the dog who was left behind was grieving, and my client was grieving. And they assumed that the dog who had passed was also sad and lonely and grieving. And I said, well, let's ask, let's find out, right? Like, let's not assume the worst. Let's go and find out. Um, and and so it was a really profound question that we were able to ask this dog who had passed, and it has influenced me for the rest of my life ever since then. And it helped me immeasurably when my own dog Aiko passed several years ago. I was grateful that I had had this conversation first. So what this dog told me was that they feel the love that they, well, this dog in particular, the love that this dog had felt for her person and her other animal family members was still as vibrant and alive as ever, even though she had passed and left her physical body. I call it transitioning. And she went on to say that grieving is a physical process. Grieving only happens to souls who are in a body. So that's those of us who are left behind, right? We're still here in this physical world in our physical bodies, and we will be grieving the loss of that loved one. But the dog told me that she doesn't experience that. She doesn't experience loneliness or pain or um, just any kind of suffering emotionally or physically, because that's just not how she is now. She's just in this really beautiful place of love and all is well. And she loves everybody unconditionally and wholeheartedly and still has that really strong bond with them. But she is okay. And that's what other pets who have passed on tell me the same thing. They say they're fine. It's those of us left behind who are used to living in the world that used to contain them. We have the hard time without them. And we're reminded of them all the time and all the things that we shared. But our pets who have passed on are fine. And I think that that's really important for us to remember as we're preparing to say goodbye and after we've already said goodbye, is we can just assume that they're okay and that they're in this new reality, these new conditions where things are different, and they're not lonely, they're not mad, they're not sad, they're not grieving. They are unconditionally loving. They get to come home back to the truth that's the heart of every single one of us, and that is that we are divine beings who are unconditionally loving in our presence and in our being. And so I hope, even if this is not the answer that you expected, or if you're struggling with a pet who is about to transition, or grieving a pet who has recently transitioned, I hope this is helpful and comforting, because I think it has that power to help us reframe all of our relationships and put them in a bigger picture understanding, a spiritual context, to understand that our love that we shared is eternal, and our grief is very real. It's very painful for us who are here, but that's not a worry that we have to add to the situation, that the pet who has moved on is also grieving and sad and in pain and lonely, or whatever else we think might be going on with them. Every single time I've contacted a pet who has passed on, an animal in the afterlife, they have told me that they are okay. They are more concerned about our well-being and our grieving process than they are about what's going on with themselves, because they are residing in this place of unconditional love, knowing that all is well. And as much as we can remind ourselves of that, that is where we're going to find our process, our peace, our comfort, and eventually our healing to move through our grieving process. And before I wrap up, I just want to say that it's really important to honor that grieving process, to not belittle it. Just because our pet who has passed doesn't feel it, it doesn't mean that it's small or insignificant or selfish or anything. We need to grieve, and we need to move through that process in our own way, but we don't need to be attached to it, and we don't need to project it on anybody else, but we can honor it in ourselves, go through it in our own way, and hold that understanding that this is not the way it will be forever, that we can move through this grief and come out on the other side a more loving, more balanced, more whole, more complete version of ourselves, and a better person for being touched and sharing that love with an animal so deeply. So I hope this is helpful. Have a beautiful day with whatever animals are in your life, and whatever animals are in your life, whether it's physical or in a spiritual or energetic form. And if you would like some help connecting with an animal who has passed, I've created an on-demand class just to do that. It's called Connect with Your Pet Angel class. And in that class, I walk you through connecting with the pet who has passed, having a conversation, and getting all of your questions answered straight from the horse or the dog or the cat's mouth, with no middleman. So if you're interested in that, there's information in the description below. And I invite you to take a step that I find to be one of the most healing, life affirming, love affirming things that we can do for ourselves, is to have a conversation with a pet who has passed and hear straight from them how they're doing and what their wishes are for us and how they feel about us. It's unbelievably loving, inspiring, and uplifting. So I hope you'll join me in my Connect with Your Pet class. And in the meantime, have a beautiful day, and I'll look forward to seeing you next time. Bye.